I'm here with two awesome guests, Rick McElroy and David Hayslip. And right now, what they're going to do in 1 minute, you see the giant timer behind me, they're going to explain, as if they're explaining to the board, what resiliency means and why they need to worry about it and be concerned. But here's the trick. They only can say one sentence at a time. So together, they're going to try to make a coherent explanation in exactly 1 minute. Gentlemen, are you ready? Yes?
All right.
You're ready. Rick, you go first. On your mark, get set, go.
You know, over the last 18 months, our ability as an organization to adapt to disruptions while maintaining continuous business operations and safeguarding our people and assets have taken a massive hit.
Gary.
So our ability to be able to go ahead and continuously to deliver services to customers despite adverse cyber attacks or adverse cyber events is going to be based on, three different things.
Oh, and those three different things are, Rick, go.
People, process, and technology. And we need to go a step beyond disaster recovery by offering some strategies to avoid costly downtime before the next big issue hits us.
Gary, wrap it up.
And the maturity of how well we are doing is actually going to be measured in what I consider to be sustainability. The better we're able to sustain operations, the better resilient we are.
Excellent. Let's begin this thing. You guys rocked.
Welcome, everybody. The CISO Series video chat is ready to begin.
Hey, welcome everybody to yet another CISO Series video chat. Today's topic is hacking resiliency, an hour of critical thinking of moving regulators from operational to risk. That is not the correct thing. Why did I have that there? That's not right. My apologies. It's not that. That was from another thing. So it's resiliency. We're talking about resiliency. It's actually hacking. It's an hour of critical thinking on withstanding the brunt of cyber attacks. Jeez, my apologies for that. Now, our two guests, who you just saw just a moment ago, is Gary Hayslip, CISO of SoftBank Investment Advisors, and Rick McElroy, Principal Cybersecurity Strategist over at VMware. I've had them both on as guests, and they're back again. Thrilled to have them. Huge thanks to our sponsor, VMware. VMware has been a phenomenal sponsor of the CISO series. We greatly appreciate their continued support. Now, 6 different ways to participate. 1, the chat room. You're already seeing it's lightening up. Submit your bad ideas. I already see bad ideas coming in. I love the fact that you have them locked and loaded and ready to go right at the beginning. Now, the other thing is, we used to say, give us your good idea or your unique ideas, but this is what we want to do, is how do we make the situation of resiliency 10% better? You can't solve the problem with one fell swoop, but what's your tip to make it 10% better? Just type in 10% : and anytime add it in. Join us on video with Bring Me On. Oh, and by the way, I should clarify that with the bad ideas, just type in bad idea : and then your bad idea around hacking resiliency. And for joining us on video and Bring Me On, just say if you've got a question or comment to make at any time during the chat, just type Bring Me On, and Andrew, our producer, will try to bring on as many of you as possible. Ask a question anytime. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, you will see there is an Ask a Question. Go ahead and ask a question. We will get to as many of those as possible. And if a lot come in, we'll want you to vote for the favorite question as well. So please do that. All right, our next thing here, our new game, which we started playing last week, is the Tragic Quadrant. I want you to remember this image, because we're going to have so many people on screen when we're playing it that I can't actually bring an image up. But the Tragic Quadrant, the two axes are inability to execute and lack of vision. So you want to aim for that upper right quadrant for the perfect bad idea. Today's schedule is explain it to the board. They just did that. Your bad ideas and questions for the first 20 minutes, of which I see them coming in right now. We will put the poll live for those bad ideas. Get those in from the 20 to 30 minute mark. And during that time, we definitely, and all throughout, answer the question, how do we make it 10% better? At 30 minutes past the hour, we will play Department of Yes, and we will also vote for your favorite questions. That's the 10% better poll. And then at 40 minutes past the hour, the best bad idea contenders come on, and they will face off to determine which bad idea of those two truly was the worst. And we will have our guests play the Tragic Quadrant, determine where on that grid their bad ideas fall. And then last questions and final advice, and then we have our meetup. Oh, see, and this is what I did. I screwed this. This is the wrong thing. An hour of critical thinking on withstanding the brunt of cyber attacks. I flipped it. Next Friday is hacking regulations. All right, that's all you need to know. The link at the bottom of the screen is the button you need to click to register for next week's. Again, you are not taken out of this video chat at any time. When you click that link, you can register for it and still be in this video chat. Oh, and that's me thanking VMware again. All right, enough of this. I've done enough of my preamble, if you will. Let's get into the actual issues at hand, and that is resiliency. I'm going to start with you, Rick McElroy, because you have actually been doing a lot of presentations on this topic, and so you're very kind of locked in, zoned into this concept of resiliency. The way I see it is, security programs are built in three different ways: avoid attacks, respond to attacks, or withstand attacks. I'm assuming resiliency is based on withstand attacks, yes?
Yes.
So are we doing the same thing when we're making a resilient program? Are we building all three, or are we focusing mostly on the withstanding attacks?
I think you have to have components of all three, right? So I don't think you can ignore, any of the legs of those stools. Sure. But I think what we're doing is like disparate strategies, right? So maybe IT has a strategy towards uptime and availability as it relates to critical outages, bugs, those types of things. So they probably spent a bunch of money on load balancers and multiple cloud environments to ensure that, if one has an outage, they can roll over to another one, or some sort of, non-prod environment that closely replicates production, right? But I think, security's been a little detached from that, right? And so the organizations that I believe are having the most success right now, especially in the time of this pandemic of extortion plus the real world pandemic, have aligned towards availability, and then are moving all of their people, their processes, and their technology kind of forward together, right? And then, so I do think when you think about even something like withstanding a ransomware attack or being resilient from that, well, I have a whole bunch of IT components that take a part of that aren't owned by the security team. Maybe those are disaster recovery, backups, all of those things. And so I don't think we can continue to have those be detached strategies anymore.
All right, Gary, as you have built resilient strategies, what do you think is the sort of the most core component, the most core issue, either conceptually the organization thinks about, or just mechanically what you physically put in place?
Honestly, I think the most core piece of resiliency really is actually training. Is when it actually gets bad, when it's actually happening, an incident that you're having, is that your people have that muscle memory already built in. They've already been trained. They know who to call. They know what systems to shut down or what systems they need to pull data from. They know how to isolate. You know what I'm saying? And so it's built into them. As you mentioned, the three pieces. I agree with Rick. I mean, you incorporate all three in with the ultimate goal of being able sustainability, being able to stay up, being able to provide services, being able to take care of your customers. And the core piece for me is that my staff are already training. They already know that incidents are going to happen. They're not scared of them. It's part of the daily business of managing a security program, and they're ready for it, and they move with it.
And do you and both of you speak to this, and obviously Rick also speak to not just for yourself but also your clients as well, is I get the feeling that there's always this sense of, oh well, we need to do it, every so months we need to do a training, but then there's the world of like the way Netflix operates, where they have the chaos monkey, where this is just a continual part of the existence of the security program. It seemed, and that seems so far on the opposite side. Is there a happy medium, or should we be on the chaos monkey side, where this constant dealing with it needs to be part of the program? Either of you jump in.
I'm glad you brought up the chaos monkey. I mean, that really, for me, when they published.
Oh, by the way, explain what the chaos monkey is to those people who don't know.
Yeah, so essentially, Netflix came out with a set of scripts originally that would break pieces of their infrastructure, right? And so their team got really, it would disable services, databases would go offline, pieces of networking infrastructure would go down. And so what did that team get really good at? Well, they got good at engineering their solutions to not be affected by the chaos monkey. And then they were trained, to Gary's point, in this real-time situation of, we have to stay up. We have to be resilient. We have to be available. And that's, I think, for me, was like a large epiphany. Well, wait a second. We can programatize this. We can codify this. We can make this a program that exists without humans in particular loops. To Gary's point, I'm a huge believer in training under fire, right? And so I think the closer we can get to that in an organization, the more resilient we're going to become.
Gary, what about you? Is your training program like every few months, or are you at the severe chaos monkey level? And also, let me throw this: if you were not around on vacation, would you feel comfortable should an incident happen, your team can handle it?
Yeah, we're not at the chaos monkey level. I have to admit that's a very mature program, and I know you don't have the size of a team of a Netflix too. Yeah, and I think a lot of us would aspire to being able to, not so much having the team, but the fact that your team is able to respond to that way, and that your systems, your stack, everything is designed that way. For me, it's like we don't go ahead and once every 3 months, hey, on Fridays we're going to do this. It's pretty. I actually surprise them. I go ahead. I just surprise them.
Okay, can you give an example of what you do to surprise them?
Well, I mean, a lot of times, just as they mentioned, we get enough issues and we get enough attacks and things that we see on a daily basis. And sometimes what we'll do in our one-on-ones is I'll just randomly grab something that we've seen and I'll ask them, walk me through what this means. Walk me through what you're seeing. Walk me through how you would respond to this. And then other times there may be, where we have, where we may be responding to an incident where a piece of equipment is down, and they may be thinking, hey, this is just, somebody's messed up a config on the Palos, on the firewalls or something. And then, and then I will walk them through, okay, but if it wasn't a misconfig, what could this be? And how could this snowball? What are your issues on the other side? And I'm trying to get them to think from a systems point of view, piece by piece by piece, what's going to be affected, what's going to impact the business, which pieces of the business are we going to lose, and is it okay? Because CIA is we're not really worried about it there, but other pieces, we make money with these pieces of the business. Those have to be resilient. We have to sustain operations there. There is no yes or no. It's all yes. And so I randomly pull these things in to make them think. I'm told that drives them crazy at times, but but the thing about it is you got to build that muscle memory, and you got to build that ability to be able to think in times of crisis, to be able to think in times. And for me, it's the systems piece. Everything's interconnected. The stack doesn't stand alone by itself. So you need to understand how it flows and what's connected.
Good point. All right, we got questions. Questions have just come in. Let's take a look at what we got here. From Dutch Schwartz, how do we get more CEOs and P&L owners to embrace, quote, incidents happen and then focus on supporting resiliency and maturity, so program and people? So, Rick, let me throw this to you. Do you find, that they can accept the fact that incidents happen, so CEOs and, P&L owners, do they face that fact and they're like, yes, what are the programs we should be spending money on? Or does there become a huge sell on the fact that incidents happen?
I think both exist.
Okay.
I think for the very mature organizations, financial sector, healthcare is certainly rapidly getting there as well. The boards do care. They are interested in a proactive discussion around, funding and driving down certain risk levels. Right. So I do think that appetite's there. I do think amongst small and medium businesses, it's always probably going to be a fight for budgets or some sort of proactivity. But again, I think having that strategic discussion with the leaders of that organization is helpful, and then continually reinforcing that, right, by manifesting the projects that we do are to make us safe, make us more resilient, right? And even I think the language that we use there is important, right? Because they're not gonna understand that you might need multiple data sources in your security program to ensure you don't have a single point of failure, and they probably don't care about that, right? But if I abstract that to the brand protection mechanisms, being resilient, keeping our the ability to service our customers or our patients, I think that's the language they do care about. And we've seen, massive new funds come in over the last 2 years into cybersecurity. Lots of people are hiring, expanding teams. So I do think the message is getting out there. We just got to continue to reinforce it.
Well, I'm sure also the message gets out there with every friggin' news that's reported of, yet another hack.
I do think in the end, it's something I say about ransomware, and it's probably not popular right now, but in the end, I think ransomware may be one of the best things to happen to the defensive side of the house just because of how noisy and loud it is. Right. I don't know, without pressing that mainstream media button and the shame button that happens with ransomware, if we would have been able to move the needle as fast as we have over the last few years.
Yeah, and something I've mentioned before, and we've seen just in the media in general, is that news is breaking in, cyber news breaks in the mainstream media first, not in the trades first anymore. It used to, but no longer. And I think you had pointed out, they look to the trades to make sense of what the hell just happened. Good question, by the way, from Craig Herder, and I believe there is a distinction, and I want either of you to jump on this. Isn't resiliency really just a nouveau version of defense in depth? I think there is a distinction. Rick, you're smiling. You want to take that one first? I'm
going to say no.
I think there is a distinction between the two.
Yeah, I think there's a distinction, right? So defense in depth is ensuring I have multiple controls that overlap that allow for redundancy of prevention, detection, and response, essentially, right? Yeah. So
essentially those first two things I'd mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, but none of those, I believe, are really anchored again towards the business outcomes, right? Because it's a defense in depth model, not necessarily a brand protection model, right? And it, it's more of a technical abstraction of layered defense, right, if you will. So for me, I think I'm not discounting defense in depth, like we've all implemented it. We all try to get there, but I think anchoring it again back in that resilience conversation, and then really around the safety of the organization itself and levels of due care. And Gary, you
want to add anything to that?
I kind of look at the defense in depth as more of expense in depth. It's when you really think about all the layers that you're buying and all the pieces that that you're buying, you kind of feel like you're never going to get there, and you're constantly changing things out, and the stack is always changing. But when you look at resiliency, though, when you look at the business side, though, yes, you're securing the business, but you also have to reduce your exposure to threats, and you also have to reduce the impact of whatever is happening to the business itself, to the services and operations that you're doing. And so I like taking the whole defense in depth piece, but now stepping outside of that and understanding, okay, where do I fit in the business? How do I interact? How do I interact with operations? What am I slowing down? What am I enabling? What value am I actually bringing? And that's why I'm like, to me, defense in depth was 5 years ago. Right now, this resiliency, this sustainability tied to business operations is more, I think, of where we should be, because it actually explains the value of cybersecurity and how we're intertwined with everything that's happening in the business, and why Rick and I kick butt at our jobs, because we get it dealing with business.
Let me remind people at the bottom of the screen, there is the button to register for next week's video chat, which is hacking regulations, of which we'll have a fun conversation on that as well. And remember, you don't get taken out of this chat at all when you click that link and register. So please do that. And by the way, to remind people, if you register early, you are eligible to win in the raffle the cool CISO series jacket. And we are, what time are we at? 10:18. Get your bad ideas in, because the poll's going to go up in 2 minutes for the bad ideas. But I have seen a flood of them come in so far. So we'll have a good challenge for both Gary and Rick. And do we have, let me see, is this the last question we had, or I can go to my own? Oh, yes, we do. This one comes from Matthew Beebe, or Bybee, I'm sorry, is how you pronounce his name. He's the CISO over at SATCOM Direct. And he asks, how do we effectively communicate the distinction between DR, disaster recovery and IT function, and BCP, business continuity planning, operational function, and that both are required to be resilient, not just IT or InfoSec? I'm going to start with Gary on this one. How do you explain the difference?
Honestly, I've had discussions of trying to explain incident response, disaster recovery, and BCP, because they just assumed that I was going to take it all. And I'm like, no, wait a minute here. I'm explaining to them incident response. I'm with my teams. We're fighting the fight. We're in the middle of what's going on, and I'm reporting up to it. What's been impacted, what resources I'm going to need, and what's going on current state. Disaster recovery. After the fact, it's done. We need to get business back up and running. Business continuity across the whole business, across the enterprise. As I'm fighting the fight or we're recovering from the fight, how is the business up here still responding, still being able to handle customers, still being able to deal with regulators? And so I kind of do that kind of picture to where they see BCP is more of the umbrella, incident response is current state, disaster recovery is, future state when you're done, and kind of, put them together in those pieces, and I still find I end up helping in all three regardless, because the CISO is kind of tied into those. But yeah, they are distinct groups that manage each of them.
I want to get to you in a second. I just want to let everybody know that the poll is up for the best bad ideas. Also, we do want your answers to the question is, how do we make this 10% better? How do we improve resiliency by just 10%? So what's your one tip to just tip the needle a little bit more in our favor on resiliency? So we're looking for unique tips on that. I should also mention, I don't think I mentioned at the beginning of the show, for those of you who are new here, we do a really fun meetup at the end of this hour. So we're going to be running for another 40 more minutes on our show. But at the end, we go into this platform called Toucan, where we get to have actually one-on-one FaceTime, or actually more sometimes group chat FaceTime with each other for a half hour. And it's a lot of fun. So stick around for that. We'll provide the link of that in the last 5 minutes of the show. All right. Rick, did you want to answer the question about the difference between DR and BCP?
Yes, certainly. Look, disaster recovery in and of itself connotates that it's an operational activity that occurs post-disaster. And it doesn't mean that there doesn't need to be planning up front, right? I do think in a lot of cases, organizations, especially ones that are mature and have varying leaders. I've run all three programs at once and not at once, right? So I do think, look, business resiliency planning can be considered part of business continuity planning. Now, I think what we need to do is take a holistic approach to all three of those. All three have work streams. All three have budgets. All three have outcomes, right? One of the main outcomes for business continuity is employee communications, ensuring that people can stay up and running during, some sort of localized and or maybe not localized event. And so I think that's the place from a strategic alignment perspective to get the leaders in a room to, again, have shared goals and shared outcomes and share some of those budgets around as well. I mean, after all, having great immutable backups, right? Like that doesn't just benefit the security team. It doesn't just benefit the IT team. And so I do think it's an area where we can get together, share a common strategy, and then drive some common projects out of as well to strengthen the entire thing. Because, one of the things that's missed out of all of this is the impact to the people. All right. So great. You had a disaster. Maybe that disaster is something like the pandemic, or the pandemic plus some ransomware is a good example. Your people are already stressed, overworked. They've already got a bunch of projects. Now they're in firefighting mode, and they got to go work 36 hours to restore Active Directory over the weekend because Bloodhound came in as part of the ransomware attack. And then they just go right back into a meeting. And I think bringing some of the people resilience into the conversation as well is going to be needed, because otherwise we're just going to continue to throw disasters at people and expect them to scale and handle it. And that model is breaking down massively. That
is a really good point, people resilience, because if you can break people. I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. We've all been broken and maybe have broken some people, to be fair. Right. Like,
and I think that's the reason why we've been saying, from a resiliency standpoint, it's all three. It's people, technology, and processes. Just don't focus on one.
Right.
Yeah, like if the end result of my process, Gary, right, or is to, go, hey, these three people in the organization are critical superheroes, and it's just going to be fine that they work for 5, 6, 7 days, however long it takes to do the investigation, coordinate with law enforcement, do all these things, and then go right back to their job. Like, if that's not considered, at the same level, whether we should load balance 2 data centers, Like we've got to get there because people are in fact quitting their jobs as a result. And that's, I think, a looming disaster in the industry of just good people that are, moving out of an organization.
Let's talk about the specific vectors that you are trying to make resilient. And one of the terms that we hear a lot is limiting the blast radius. What mechanically are you doing to your environment to, quote, limit the blast radius, Rick?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, you'll hear things like microsegmentation, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I have IoT devices that I can't stick, even basic antivirus on, right? Or they're running, a lot of the biomedical devices are running legacy, operating systems that are embedded that can't be updated. And so it's like, look, that's a likely vector an attacker going to hit. But how do I prevent, my critical customer care database or, my public facing applications from being pivoted from those systems, right? Or my financial systems, which are critical to an organization. So I think you see things like that. You definitely see things like application control play a role in that. CASB, I think plays a role. And so look, there's a number of technical controls out there to segment your environment and ensure that you can at least limit the scope to the first two things they get initial access to. But at that point, then it becomes, okay, great. So I limited the blast radius. I have a good plan around a couple of systems, but what happens if that breaks down, right? And so again, I think using some of the worst case scenarios, right? And I happen to think some of these ransomware attacks that occur is kind of the worst case today, right? They're taking down availability. They are creating the sense of urgency, expecting you to suddenly learn how to procure Bitcoin or Monero, and do all those things, and then get publicly shamed about it, right? So it creates like for the people that are running those programs, it creates this sense of emergency, right? And people start to make mistakes. They've been on the phone triaging this stuff for 12 hours, trying to quarterback all of these various groups. And so I think like ultimately for me, it's like shaking out those so that a reasonable sense of what's actually going to break. Then I can go to my leadership and say, look, we have good, better, best here, right? And best is going to be a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of people, but maybe we just need better, right? And so to the point of about 1%. Well, if you incrementally move things 10% every year, eventually
you're in amazing shape.
Even if it's 10% a year, you're getting there, right? Yeah.
Well, 10% is a monstrous jump. Yeah, you'll be there very, very quickly. Here, I just want to play a quote, and my feeling is this is the way that everyone should answer if someone's concerned.
So what are we supposed to do?
Well, luckily you have a gifted and talented security officer.
That is the right answer. Can anyone, by the way, my guest can't turn it. Can anyone answer what movie that comes from? Please type it in there, what movie that comes from, because I have more quotes from it coming up. All right. We are just 3 minutes away. Gary, I want your answer to the same question I was just asking Rick, which was about, we got a ton of questions that just came in. We'll address them in a second. But about what are you looking to physically do with your environment to create it more resilient? Essentially, like limiting the blast radius being one of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's just as he was saying about the segmentation piece. I mean, I think all of us follow some type of framework, but we modify it to, what we think the business is going to need. The biggest thing I've learned is that, my stack is integrated into the IT stack. So both IT and security, we work extensively, very close together. I need to know about, and, we're 100% cloud. And so I need to know about any new SaaS apps that are coming in, and I need to know about any new data streams and where data is at, and who's authenticating, who's authenticated to these apps and who's going to be the business owner for them. We start filling all of this in so that we better understand when we do have an incident, who does it actually impact? And, what part of the stack does it actually impact? It helps us very quickly localize the issue, isolate it, and then be able to go ahead and clean it up. Being 100% cloud, everything's moved to the endpoint now. It's either to the endpoint or it's to the edge. I don't have anything on-prem. I don't have anything in other data centers. In fact, it's, with everything being SaaS, I still have security issues. I still have things that we've got to manage, but we respond differently, and you're able to isolate very quickly. But you have to know your data. You have to know your users. You have to know what's critical and what's not. what you can go ahead and put on a back burner and isolate, and we'll get to later, and what you need to go ahead and triage immediately because it's going to impact the business. And a lot of this is, you've spoken with your executives and you know how much risk they're willing to accept. You know what's important to the business. You know what's important to your teams, to your operations teams, to those that actually generate revenue. And that's what you fight, first. And that's, really where we're focused at. Like I said, 2 years now into full 100% cloud, and everything for me has really shifted, because I don't have the stuff that I had before, which is cool. I don't have to worry about servers and on-prem stuff and managing all these, apps that I got to push out, because I've now got third party that does that for me. But there's a whole other different layer of security dealing with that now.
Now, by the way, there was some great advice in the movie Hackers.
You need an army.
That's it. An electronic army. If I were us, I'd get on the internet, send out a major distress signal.
Hackers of the world unite.
Had you thought of that, Rick? Had you just put out Hackers of the World Unite?
I have. Unfortunately, there's never 100% agreement amongst the hacker community on anything, and so it's hard to get all of us to move in the same direction at once.
All right, I got a phone call. Just came in.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right. This is what we got. We have some bad ideas that came in, and actually the one that's been voted up the most actually is not that bad of an idea. So I think you're going to be okay with this first one, but it's got lots of votes for it. So I'm going to make you play first, Rick. And so again, this is beat the is Department of Yes, not to beat the bad idea. That's a different game that we play. Department of Yes. And so what you need to do is tell me why you wanted to deploy this, quote, bad idea. And again, this first one I don't think is that bad, to tell you the truth. So I'm throwing a softball at you at the beginning. And Gary, you'll need to answer as well. Here we go. And by the way, speak up if this is you that sent in this bad idea, because we're going to want you to come back on in about 9 minutes from now. Make the Rocky movies part of your onboarding process in order to inspire resiliency in the organization. Rick, why do you want to do this?
Yeah, well, look, I'm a big believer in self-marketing of what security is up to, right? And becoming kind of in everyone's face. However, it's all gotten rather boring, hasn't it? I mean, here we are, we're using KnowBe4 or, Hack the Human. And, they're just boring trainings, right? So why not infuse some pure energy? So and talk about a resilient human, right? We're here talking about resiliency.
Resilient human, yes.
I mean, how many punches to the face did he take and kept getting up? If my systems could resemble Rocky as they're interacting with our customers,
should you punch your coworkers in the face?
I mean, it depends on the HR department and the rules, right? Should is a tough question.
Depends on the HR department.
Yeah, I mean, in the Marine Corps, we do that a lot. They just it's called training, right? But
exactly.
in most corporate environments, no. But yeah, I think it's a great idea to inspire folks that want to get involved in InfoSec, and certainly Rocky's fairly inspirational. And who doesn't love Eye of the Tiger, right? So
I used to shoot layups to that. I remember before a game. Oh yeah. All right, good answer, Gary. Why do you want to do this?
Oh, like I said, I like the idea. I mean, you definitely mix it up. You go ahead and you show that, just his drive of not giving up, just his drive of he's focused. This is where we're going. You're taking all these beatings, you're getting knocked down, but you're getting up and you keep on pushing forward. I look at it not just as, from a breach aspect, but just, in managing a security program as a whole in an organization. This is what it's going to be like for the long haul. It's not an easy thing, and you got to go ahead and be willing as a team to take those hits and to be able to help each other up off the mat and to keep pushing forward because you got that goal.
The Rocky movies help. All right, here we go. Here's the second one. And again, I don't think this one's such a horrible idea. I'm going to make you answer first, Gary, on this one. In security, we like to say security is everyone's responsibility. You've said that before, Gary, right? Rick, have you said it? Yeah. You've said it. Okay. Let's apply the same thing to resiliency. Each week, select a random employee. Now, that's not just in cyber, just a random employee, and have them run your failover scenario. Gary, why do you want to do this?
Oh, I think that'd be great. Honestly, I think it'd be great to go ahead and, on a weekly basis, or like, even on a monthly basis, we randomly grab somebody and have them go ahead and, hey, you're going to run our fish test. You're going to help us select the fish scenario that we're going to go ahead and run, and see, who we get, just so that they can go ahead and see behind the scenes what it takes for us to be able to secure the organization, and and what it takes for us to go ahead and be right every time.
It is not that bad an idea. Yeah, you guys are giving us good, bad ideas. I don't think these are that horrible. Yeah, Rick, why do you want, first of all, for you, Gary, Rick, why do you want to do this?
Yeah, well, look, I was part of a wonderful organization. That organization was UPS. UPS actually believes in cross-training and sending managers off to run other functions that they haven't run before, because ultimately one of those employees is probably going to get promoted up to the COO or CEO level, right? Thinking back to my Marine Corps days and the way we train, right? So we unfortunately have to train that someone falls on a battlefield. Well, what happens if Gary's in Vegas at DEF CON and his team can't reach him? What happens if his whole team is at DEF CON and can't be reached? Other people in the organization should know and be able to have the ability to execute on our processes. And so I actually think if we did this, it would have a massive impact, which was other people would understand our worlds a little bit better. And then I think the conversations would get a little easier. I actually don't believe this is a super horrible idea.
No, these were not. Anyways, Craig Herder and Fred Grun, those are their ideas. We're going to want you to jump on in about 4 minutes, Craig. We're going to go to one of our questions again. All right, so we can flip off that poll, and I believe we have a decent number. Andrew, let me know on the back channel if we've got a decent number to put up the 10% improvement poll. But yeah, these are not that horrible. All right, so now let's go to our questions. So hopefully they're voted up. Whoops, here we go. That one we did from Matthew already. Okay, here's a good question. Well, I think this is an easy one to answer. Give me a quick answer on this. From Steve Cobb. Rick, what takes precedence, security or productivity?
Productivity.
Yeah.
Every time.
Gary, do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
So, if you have security and nothing's productive, you're not generating revenue. I mean, right? Nothing's happening.
Productivity gets budget.
All right. Fred asked a really good question, and that is, how effective are tabletop exercises when it comes to a resiliency standpoint? I know it's part of the equation, but how much can be done without it? How often do you need to do it? Because I think communications, I'm assuming, is a key part to this. Gary, I'll throw this to you first.
Well, I mean, we did a tabletop at the executive level.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the executives, all the leadership team, everybody was involved. We had one of the consulting agencies come in. They had this great scenario. I wanted to yell bullshit the whole time because I was like, there's no way that's going to happen. I just shut my mouth because honestly, that tabletop was not for me. That tabletop was for them to be able to understand the intricacies of cyber, the intricacies of these threats, the impact of these types of things, and how to be able to work together, talk to each other, who needs to report, what kind of resources they need to be pulled in. At the end of it, when we did the out briefing, I actually got the chance to walk them through and explain to our current stack, current policies, everything that we got, why this couldn't happen and how we would respond and how we had multiple, and so they actually left feeling good that, wow, we are actually, doing what we should be doing. But I actually had to just learn to shut up during that whole event and let them do their thing because it was really for them. And it was important for them to understand how to work together.
But it's also important for you to understand what they know and what they don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why you have, and that is, and Rick, bring that up. I mean, that's a thing that's super duper tough. You want to say, no, don't do that. Do this. And you want to, but you got it. There's a period of time you actually have to keep your mouth shut, keep your hands to yourself and just let it flow. So you understand what they're thinking so you can start to build the program around them. Right, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was one of my key takeaways from one of the first ever tabletops we did around a localized disaster in San Diego. We happened to, have a major power outage, right? So it was a good time to reinforce that. But yeah, what was enlightened for me, to Gary's point, is speak little, listen. Okay, these are things that exist already. Maybe we didn't know about that they're already doing comms on. We've got a whole bunch of systems, it sounds like, aren't in place, like we have no callbacks for employees. But if security is in there constantly pointing it out, Like it's just going to land as like, okay, security dude, you're just telling us a bunch of stuff. If you allow them to tease it out for themselves, maybe ask them some leading questions, right? Like I'm pretty famous for doing that. Just asking some leading questions around like, oh, okay. And then how do we ensure that our employees have been communicated to? Have we given them an alternate work site, right? Like those types of things. Hey, has anybody thought about how many people from IT it's going to take to spin up, trailers with 50 laptops in each one of the trailers for our call center, things like that. That's when I think the business starts to go, oh, wait, we aren't as prepared as we want to be. And then they want to own that, right? Like sure, maybe some of the, projects come to your function, but let the business take some ownership of it, right? And allow them to get together on it, and then just be there to be supportive, be Johnny on the spot when they need something. And then I think they'll start to see during the next tabletop, hey, things have improved. We have improved. Now, maybe after the fourth one, you're ready for a realistic test to start pulling some cables in your data center.
Oh, it is time to bring on both Fred and Craig. Can we bring on Fred and Craig right now? And while they are coming on, let me remind everybody, the link at the bottom of the screen is to register for next Friday's video chat. If you have not done that already, go ahead and click that link. Remember, it doesn't take you outside of this chat. Please register for next week and tell your friends to join us as well. We love having you. This is, by the way, the chat room has been lighting up. You guys have been phenomenal. Thank you so much. And your bad ideas. There is Craig wearing his CISO Series jacket because he is a past winner of bad ideas. Fred, I'm confused. I don't remember. Has Fred won before? Fred will tell us as well. Fred is on too. Fred's coming in just a second. Now, to remind you, Craig is the one with the Rocky bad idea, and Fred's on too. Oh, it looks like Fred's having video issues right now coming on. All right. Well, here's the whole thing, and I'll defend Fred. This has happened before. We've had this happen before, but we'll say is. Remember, the whole point here is which idea was the worst. We actually kind of thought these were both good. So which one would cause the most damage in your environment? And you had the two of you, Rick and Gary, have to determine that. Craig, go ahead, argue why your idea is actually not as good as we thought it was.
So really simple. If you remember in Rocky 3, Rocky wants to take on this new boxer, once he gets taken out. And what does his trainer say? The problem is you've become too civilized. And that's the challenge here, is we play too nice. We stop taking it to then, and we stop defending at the level we need to defend at, and we lower our standard as opposed to staying as agile and as effective as we need to be.
Oh, so it's a different way of looking at it. Now, with the Fred Grun, and unfortunately Fred's not going to be able to join us, but I'll defend or I'll argue why Fred's idea is really horrible. Picking any random person from the company and having them run the scenario, which... who knows if they're going to make it tough enough? Who knows what they know, how they know they're doing, and how angry everyone's going to get with them once they've done it. So I'm not arguing that that's it. So I'm going to throw it to you, Rick and Gary. Which idea truly would, from a pure risk perspective, would cause the most damage if you implemented it?
I was definitely going to go with Craig if you said Rocky 4, or actually Rocky 5. Was kind of bad as well. Yeah, so David, you made some great points on behalf of Fred. That sometimes putting people in charge for a day allows for some really wacky things to occur. So I will go with Fred has the worst idea.
Okay, Gary, what do you think, Fred or Craig here?
I mean, I would have to say Fred as well. I mean, the thing about this is, I actually like that idea, and I'm going to plan on implementing it. But I'm going to plan on implementing my version of it, where I have control more of what they do. But I think if we just randomly just did it the way he said it, it would be straight up chaos. I said, I don't think we would really want to do that.
All right, now being that we have actually, I can do this, I can bring this on. Where would these fall on the tragic quadrant here? Let's take a look. Okay, so the vertical axis is the inability to execute, so a high inability to execute and a high lack of vision. Let's say with Craig, Gary, I'll ask you, where does Craig's idea about the Rocky, where does that fall on the tragic quadrant? Which quadrant?
I'd say it's actually down at the bottom left, but more towards the middle on the right.
Okay.
Just because I could execute that. I would definitely want to go ahead and use those videos. Use the Rocky movies for certain things. But it's What is it moving over to the right? I can't see.
Moving over to the right. So it's inability to execute. You really can't execute this, and the vision on this is pathetic. That would be the far upper right.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I think it would be definitely down in the bottom.
Lower left is actually the place you want to be in, but for not bad.
It's actually a good idea. I actually like it.
All right. What do you think, Rick, for the Tragic Quadrant?
I think there's a high, like it's easy to execute that vision, right? You just turn it into new hire training. And
I would actually put it in the lower right, actually, because it is, I think the vision is excellent and it's easy to execute. Or lack of vision. No, what am I saying? So lack of vision, high left. So it'd be lower left. I'm sorry, lower left. I take that back.
Yeah, because look, I mean, it's let's call it new clips for the same thing, right? Which is trying to get people hype on security. So maybe that's not an innovator, in the Tragic Quadrant, right? So Fred's I put clearly over there because it's going to be hard to execute to get people in job rotations from their managers. It's certainly hard to borrow 2 hours for someone to clean up a blog today. And then while it does show vision, right? I think it actually does show a little bit of vision there. I just think the inability to execute on that one's like a lot higher. So,
and I'm the same way. I see Craig lower left and, Fred, upper left.
As a human, I don't, but like their idea today presented.
All right. Excellent job, Craig. Thank you very much. And by the way, I have another clip for us.
Look, you want to be elite? You got to do a righteous hack.
You do have to do a righteous hack. And have the two of you, would you say that you are elite? Can you do a righteous hack, Rick?
I think it depends on what righteous means, but some things that I did for Booz Allen I can't talk about, so I'll leave it at that.
All right. Let's check our poll out here. Have people been voting the 10% ideas? Here's a good one. One is communication, which I believe was Rich Mason, and he wrote it all in capitals with a giant exclamation point. So I think that's very important. And also we have, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was Rich who said that. Adapt your language, and speak up if this is yours. Adapt your language when talking with non-security executives to communicate what is being said here. Yet another communications question. Oh, this might be Rich's again. So adapt your language when talking with non-security executives to communicate what is being said here. Systematic and people resiliency, quality business outcomes. It's a good tip. So if you're focusing on those things as you communicate, that could give you that little 10% hit. Yes, Gary?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
It's not a question. It was just actually it was a 10% tip and advice here. Okay. I'm guessing the communications is Charles. Dutch is the other one. So he says adapt your language when talking with non-security executives to communicate what is being said here. Systematic and people resiliency, quality business outcomes. If you are focused on that as you're talking, you'll get that little edge. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, I like to go and say the communications piece, getting people involved, the executive team, doing I call it fish tacos and beer, where you do lunches with peers. You establish your champions. Oh yeah. The people piece. I get a lot more done on the people side at times than I do on the technical side.
All right. Let's go to our questions right now. And I'm going to go with this one. Matthew, I already asked this question. You can take that one off. I answered Matthew. Let's go to Dutch's question, which isn't exactly on resiliency, but it talks about team makeup. And it's from Dutch Schwartz. How do we accelerate the growth of the next generation of CISOs to help them understand that driving business outcomes, not just risk avoidance, is the key? How do we help that transition from hands-on security expert to business leader? Rick, jump in.
Yeah, I'm going to raise my hand and say I was one of those people and continue to remain one of those people, right? So I think, Gary, a lot of us who were doing InfoSec as InfoSec grew up, frankly speaking, found ourselves getting promoted up through the chain because we were the handful of people who knew security, right? And so I think what we've tried to do is take that knowledge. And I mean, I'm not going to steal Gary's thunder, but he's on his third book. Essentially attempting to do that, right? To take this fourth book, sorry, Gary, to take that knowledge base and put it in a way where people, as they're approaching information security manager level, right, as they're coming up to then be promoted to director. And it's a huge shift. And one of those shifts, to the last comment, is around how you actually represent security, the terms that you use, the business language, understanding business outcomes and how security aligns to those. Look, there's a number of wonderful courses, whether those are MBA programs that have an emphasis on cyber that are out there as well. But I would say, I think even generated into the community, like if you're paying attention, there's a whole lot of resources out there that are free or low cost to help you on that journey. And it's just a commitment I think we've had, right, Gary?
Yeah. And a real quick, easy thing for CISOs to do, just, in-house with their teams. If you're doing internal assessments, if you're doing reviews on your stack, have your team members basically pulling people in from other business units to help you evaluate for risk. Get them used to working with the other business units. And when you do that, they start really understanding the business itself and how they sit in it and how they serve their customers, and so you get them involved outside of the team within the business. Because honestly, security can get so insular. I mean, Rick, this, we get so focused, within our teams, and you really need to have those champions, and you really need to be working with the other business units that, it's just, you start getting the bigger view, and you start understanding impact, and it really helps you if you're doing anything with resiliency.
By the way, Gary just teased an upcoming episode of CISO Series Video Chat. I believe it's the end of this month. Will be Hacking Security Champion. So come for that as well. We're going to be talking about that topic as well. Sandor, I'm going to screw up your last name, and I know you've told me how to pronounce this in the past, but Sliderink, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. But he asked a question that when we had lunch, the three of us, that this came up about how do you monitor and secure against social engineering attacks? And I'm going to add a little to this is if you're a business that is doing some level of customer service, you have to take inbound information. And I've always kind of told people like, well, if it's coming inbound, meaning you didn't request it, it's coming to you and they're asking you to take an action, that's something to be wary of. But if it's outbound, if you go to, you contact someone, you're asking for something and you're giving information, that's a more kind of safe way to do it. But again, if you're an organization that takes a lot of inbound information to then act upon, how do you create a program that can sort of be wary of social engineering behavior, Rick?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, especially for things like help desk, password resets, MFA onboarding, which is another area that pen testers continue to have success in. I do believe like bringing a social engineering component into your red teaming as you're doing it is going to be huge with the particular focus of the groups that happen to interact with customers probably the most, right? I would say as an organization, some of the leading ones are like allowing themselves to participate in some of the CTFs that are out there, right? Where it's kind of real time. It's no longer kind of the shame factor that it used to be. But I do think specific to rudimentary is like specific training for those groups. Better scenario is realistic testing, which is going to include these days, unfortunately, the use of deepfake, voice as well as deepfake video. And look, from a technology perspective, there's a number of technologies that are out there that help to mitigate some of those detections. But end of the day, if your folks that are taking phone calls from other people understand how these attackers are doing what they do, right? Creating a sense of urgency, creating a sense of confusion. Then they can start to see those symptoms as people are talking. And I think actually bringing in some real world examples, like how some of these scam groups, you can go watch the videos on YouTube, include that as part of your education and awareness forum. But then I think you got to realistically test it as well and give kudos to the people, like actually recognize the people who recognize those attacks and report them. Make them your champion down there, right? Give them an award for risk mitigation, whatever it is. But make it a big deal to catch it.
All right. Before I want to get your input on this, Gary, in just a second. Please click the link on the bottom because we're going to change that in a couple of minutes, and we're going to be wrapping up in just a few. We are going to do our video or meetup portion at the end of it, so stick around for that. That link will be at the bottom. But if you haven't registered for next week's video chat, go ahead and click on that. Gary, what would you add to that in terms of the building a sort of resiliency program against social engineering, given that there's a lot of stuff that you're taking, input on that can be gamed through social engineering?
Well, I think, and I have to say, I mean, and we're doing this for real. My present employer, where we're scanning. We've got multiple tools. We're scanning and we compare the data. We compare the threat intel data. You also want to belong to organizations like FSISAC or one of the ISACs. So again, you can go ahead and talk to people that are in your specific community who are also dealing with these issues, and you can share data back and forth. And you take this real life data and the scanning and the things that you're finding, you incorporate that in with your training. So not only are you, when you're doing your training, you can actually give your personnel real life stats as to, hey, this is what we're seeing today for our own organization and our own people. These are things that we're seeing and attacks that we're seeing, to give them context. They go ahead and they hear you preaching about the training, but if you can go ahead and tie it into what they're doing daily, and what we're seeing, for the business, it just makes it a little bit more real world, a little bit more lifelike. And then, as Rick was saying, and then on and the training piece, you bring in individuals who live this world and are experienced in it. Like, we brought in, specific FBI agents that, deal with fraud and deal with these areas with these social media, type issues, to brief our finance teams and to brief our procurement teams. So not only do they have the training on the types of social engineering attacks that they're going to see, but now they're actually talking with law enforcement who've seen hundreds of these, and they can ask questions, and again, you want to try to make it as real life as possible and give them that context so they understand why we're doing this and why it's important for them to watch out for these things. And finally, at the end of the day, I tell them, it's okay to stop. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay. Give me a call. You've got my phone number. Call me at home. I don't care. I'd much rather have you trust me and give me a call so you and I can talk, so you know that you're making the right decision. And a lot of times that's what it comes down to. It's just in helping our employees understand it's okay to go ahead and say no. It's okay to say stop. I need to ask a question. I don't feel right about this.
Good point. All right. What I'm going to do right now is we're going to wrap this thing up, and I'm going to get your input, from both of you, your last thoughts in the last couple of minutes we have. I just want to mention that next Friday, as I mentioned before, is Hacking Regulations. Andrew, you can go ahead and change that link at the bottom of the screen. If you haven't gotten a chance to register for it, you can always go to CISOseries.com and click the register for video chats button to do that. So change the link. Oh, yeah, the meetup. You just did it. You just did it now. All right. Huge thanks to our sponsor, VMware. Thank you so much for sponsoring this very video chat. We greatly appreciate it and all your great support. And Rick, I'm going to definitely want your input of what VMware is doing in the resiliency standpoint. Starting in 90 minutes from now, we are going to be doing our cybersecurity headlines week in review. You can come right back here to crowdcast.io/CISO series and participate. It's just 20 minutes. Get a 20 minutes review of just the most important stories in cybersecurity this week with a cybersecurity practitioner, being Steve Zalewski, my co-host for Defense in Depth and former CISO over at Levi Strauss, will be the one providing that context. Stick around for our meetup. Click that link at the bottom of the screen. You can do that right now. Please do that and join us. We're going to be on the Toucan platform, which sort of simulates a virtual party. You'll see floating bubbles. Just click where it says join to have a conversation with someone, and you can join 2, 3, 4, 5 people and have multiple people in the conversation. Tell your friends to join us. We do this every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and we would love to have you participate as well. Would you like to sponsor a video chat? Guess what? We are sold out for 2021. And in fact, the last 2 video chats of the year will also be sponsored by VMware. So we're looking forward to having them on board again as well. But if you're interested in 2022, ping me and I will let you know. That's the end of that. Here, let me do that. All right, Rick, I'm throwing this to you right now. Give me, in 1 minute, please tell me what VMware is doing in this area and how to contact you and get involved. And also, VMworld is coming up. Let them know about VMworld.
Yeah, VMworld's next week. I'm actually running 3 live sessions on cyber resiliency, where I'm going to talk about getting to the nirvana state and the Tao of cyber resiliency that results. And look, I am happy to actually be a part of an organization clearly focused on resiliency inside multi-cloud environments, inside of a data center. There's a wonderful amount of solutions that VMware offers to the market. I'm not going to get into all of them here. However, If you want to have a follow-up, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always active at InfoSecRick on Twitter, or McElroy at VMware.com. Hit me up for a conversation, and love to come and talk to you about what we're doing.
And actually, I believe Sandy and Brooke, if you're in the background, if you can drop the links for VMworld for registration, and specifically for, or you can just look up Rick McElroy's sessions to attend those. Gary, with 30 seconds to go, please, any last thoughts on this topic of resiliency? And I know he's at G Hayslip on Twitter and also very active on LinkedIn.
Yep, on Twitter and LinkedIn. Just that, I look at resiliency as, the result of resiliency is sustainability. How mature your efforts are will be how well, your organization is able to sustain operations. I think they're both tied together. And it's a way to go ahead and link what you're doing from a resilience standpoint to the business. And I definitely want to go ahead and work. I'm sure Rick and I'll come up with a keynote or two around this issue. Because again, we talk about this all the time.
Awesome. All right. I want to thank Rick McElroy. I want to thank Gary Hayslip. I want to thank VMware. I want to thank the audience. Please click the link at the bottom. We want to see you over at Toucan at the meetup. If you have a problem getting in, please contact me via david@cisoseries.com or on LinkedIn, because we had some issues yesterday when we did our party last night. But hopefully you won't have any issues getting in. Rick and Gary will be there as well. See you over there. Click the link at the bottom. Bye.